In my last video, I talked about that freelancers can earn a lot of money, but that there are of course also downsides to that. And in this video, I'd like to share my experiences from about 7 to 8 years of working as a freelance developer in various projects. Hi, I'm Johannes Frey, but you can simply call me Joe, and for those of you who don't know me, I've been working as a software engineer for more than 15 years and I'm here to share the few little things that I picked up along the way. During all the time working as a freelance developer, I sometimes hear things like, "Oh, Mr. Moneypenny," or "You are carrying away all those bags of money," and stuff like that. And my response always is, if that's what you think, why don't you do it then? And it's obvious that this is only partially true, and to be honest, it also needs to be true, because there are also many other things to factor into this equation. Being on both sides of the table at different points in my life, having worked as an employed IT consultant, as well as currently being self-employed and doing freelance work, I would like to share my experiences with you. And I don't only want to touch on the monetary side of things, but I also want to talk about the differences in work itself and about the differences in the mental state. But since I already started with it, let's talk about money first. Alright, let's tackle the elephant in the room first. Money, money, money! It's true that freelance developers typically earn more than employed developers, but this also makes sense. At least I hope this makes sense to you. While the barrier of entry is quite low, you only need a somewhat decent laptop and an internet connection, but you still have to deal with various other costly things. The biggest of which being usually not having any social securities like pensions if you don't care about them yourself. So you always need some money to put away for retirement. And the human mind is an asshole sometimes. It has a hard time caring about something that might happen in like 30 years or so. It's often the case of, yeah, whatever, future me will take care of that, but at some point the time is up, you end up without any money for retirement because you didn't care and now you're which is also a downside working as a freelancer, but I will talk about some of those things a bit later. Also, you need to have a buffer for periods of unemployment. Maybe your project ended and you haven't found another project yet, and maybe you have a hard time finding one because of the current economic issues. You need to have some money stored away for these situations as well. Those and other insecurities need to be compensated for. So, yep, it's true, freelance developers earn more than employed developers. But it needs to be this way because self-employed developers need to create all those buffers, and also living with those insecurities needs to be monetarily compensated. A nice thing is though that working as a freelance developer, you can often buy things like computers, cell phones and other technical gadgets as business expenses, which makes them quite more affordable. Now that we've talked about money, let's talk about some other differences between those two working styles. There is no doubt that you have much more freedom working as a freelancer. You don't need to follow any bureaucratic structures of the company that you're currently working for. If you want to have some vacation days, you just tell that to your project sometime in advance instead of asking for approval. If you need an upgrade for your laptop or computer, you just do it instead of asking for approval. If you have any appointment in the middle of the day, then you can just go for it without asking for approval. Obviously, you still need to play by some rules, else you will be kicked out of the project. But fact is that no one can disciplinarily tell you what you have to do besides what tasks you need to work on. But there are also downsides in the differences of work which you need to be aware of and which you need to be fine with. Usually as a freelance developer, you have little to say about how things are done, which things need to be done and whether something makes sense or not. Usually you have influence on the technical implementations, but often not really on the feature set itself or even the work processes inside the team. One example that comes to mind is in a project where I worked in, there was no team spirit within the dev team at all. Everybody was basically just tinkering on their own things and not really knowing or even caring about what all the others in the team did. My idea was to at least introduce code reviews so that people have some sort of touch points and start talking more with each other. I proposed it, management said, "That's a great idea." We added it to our definition of done and nobody was doing it. I continued bringing it up and people said, "Yeah, we will do that," but they never did and I had no disciplinary means to do anything but suggest and bring it up. And things like that actually happen quite often. And as a freelancer, you can only push it so far until you need to back off. Even if you have the best intentions and would like to help the team, if the project lead or the manager says something like, "Yeah, but this is how we always did this," then you're basically shit out of luck. And as someone who is actually employed by the company, you usually have a much better lever to actually improve or shape some things than as a freelancer. Another important topic that I would like to shed some light on is the mental side of things. And at least in my opinion, those two different working styles have very different implications on the mental state. When being employed, you usually have a boss and you try to impress him to get a promotion or a raise or something like that. So you basically always have some sort of carrot dangling in front of you that you can run towards and try to reach. It's a bit different when you are a self-employed freelancer. There are no promotions or raises or anything. Once you made the decision, you basically career-wise reached your destination. Sure, the role in the project might change from project to project, but it doesn't feel like an achievement. At least it never did for me. The point is even more drastic when it comes to negotiate your rates when applying for new projects. You are just nobody with some stuff in their CV, and even if you were the baddest MFer in your last project, nobody cares and there is no way to prove it at this point. And working as a freelancer, you need to know that and you need to be fine with that. Besides that, you also need to care a lot about bureaucracy and things like, for example, taxes. Government institutions basically always want you to fill out some forms, pay something, or bug you in any other way. And that is a constant pain that you need to deal with besides your actual work. And because of that and the other things that I mentioned before, like pensions, buffers, uncertainty, and stuff like that, I personally find it very hard to turn my brain off at the end of the day, because I always think about, yeah, I still need to answer that letter, I still need to take care of that, and yeah, things like that. But this is the cost that you chose to pay once you decided to be self-employed. And this should not come off as whining or anything, but I just want to share my real and truthful experiences. Of course, there's also upsides. You can try to shape your self-employment to whatever you want. You have no boss telling you what to do. You can do it the way you want it and maybe hire some more people, maybe do something different. But I can tell you one thing, this does not help with the sleepless nights. But it can help to overcome the feeling that you're not progressing in any direction. But then again, it's up to you. Nobody will do it for you. There is no boss telling you what direction to go. So you need to make this decision, and then you need also to take on the responsibility. As a self-employed freelancer, there is a completely different point to responsibility and consequences. When working in a company, what actually are the real consequences that you have to fear when you As long as you don't do it knowingly, the worst thing that can happen is that you get maybe fired, make a bad deal, the company loses money, okay, you won't get a bonus, poor you. But being self-employed, even as a freelancer, get hired for the wrong project, fuck up some deal, whatever. Now it's your personal money at stake, and in very bad circumstances, it may even be your livelihood. So you need to be much more careful about the things that you sign and the things that you enter into contractual obligations with. But it's like you learn in Economics 101, the more chance, the more risk. To maybe sum things up a bit, working as a freelance developer has its upsides, but it also has its downsides. And on one hand, you earn very decent money, have more degrees of freedom, and are able to shape things the way you want. On the other side, you also have some downsides that need to be compensated for. In my opinion, it boils down to what type of person you are and what you value more. Having more security, the ability to turn your head off once you leave work, and having a clear career path? Or are you the type of person who finds the previous scenario super boring and unfulfilling and want to try and shape his or her own future? There is no right or wrong in my opinion, but I hope that those points help you to decide what might be right for you. If you watched this video this far, please leave a comment down below and tell me what you think on that topic. And while you are down there, also maybe go completely insane on that like button. That would really help me out, and thanks a lot. So, thank you and see you in the next one.